Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So, inshallah, as the brother said, we're going to be covering Surat An-Nasr and Surat Al-Masad. And to be honest, we don't have much time. So I'm going to just launch straight into Surat An-Nasr as the first of the surahs. So Surah An-Nasr is the 110th surah of the Qur'an and is the second shortest surah of the Qur'an. There are three surahs of the Qur'an, each of which contain three verses. And they are Surat An-Nasr and Surat Al-Kawthar and Surat Al-Masad, Surat Al-Asr, sorry. And Surat Al-Nasr is the second shortest, and Surat Al-Kawthar is the shortest of the three. And it's said that when Umar ibn al-Khattab, the second Khalifa of Islam, when he was leading the prayer, there was a Persian man who was praying behind him and who basically stabbed him. And this was the death of Umar ibn al-Khattab. And it's said that Abdurrahman ibn Auf, who was praying behind Umar ibn al-Khattab, when this happened to Umar, Abdurrahman ibn Auf, he stepped forward and he recited these two surahs, i.e. Surat An-Nasr and Surat Al-Kawthar, basically the two shortest surahs of the Qur'an. And the other thing to say as an introduction is that some say that Surat An-Nasr, and this is in Sahih Muslim, is the last complete surah to be revealed in the whole of the Qur'an. So it's a very late surah. And also one of the unique aspects of the Qur'an is the aspect of what's called nazm, or coherence, or thematic unity. So basically, and Maulana Farahi, Hamiduddin al-Farahi, who was a great exegete, a great mufassir of the Qur'an, who died about 100 years ago, he very much focused on this aspect. Because at that time, many of the Orientalists were accusing the Qur'an of being basically confusing. Many of the people who wrote about the Qur'an, Theodore Noldecker and other people like that, Goldseye, these people, they charged the Qur'an with the accusation that it was confusing, it was a mess. And Maulana Farahi really, what he attempted to do was to demonstrate, and very successfully actually, that the Qur'an is extremely logically ordered, but you need to understand its ordering. It's not just like any other piece of work. It's not just a mathematical work or an engineering book, which is 1, 2, 3, 4. It's actually organized in a very unique manner. And he points out that Maulana Farahi, he says that the surah that you studied last week and the one that precedes Surat An-Nasr is Surat Al-Kafirun. And that ends with lakum dinukum waliyadin, right? Lakum dinukum waliyadin. That for you is your religion and for me is my religion. So the Prophet ﷺ is creating a distinction. He's contrasting the deen of Allah with the deen of Quraysh, with the non-believers. And Maulana Farahi says, lakum dinukum, that your deen, this half of the verse, Surat An-Nasr comes to explain that. And comes to explain that this deen, which is the deen of Allah and the deen of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, will triumph. And this is what Surat An-Nasr is about. It is the triumph of the deen of Allah. And the last half of that verse, which Surat Al-Kafirun ends with, waliyadin, waliyadin, that last half, Surat An-Nasr explains that. And the first half, lakum dinukum, Surat Al-Masad explains that. So basically, what you have is Surat Al-Kafirun, then you have Surat An-Nasr, which explains part of the last verse of Surat Al-Kafirun, and Surat Al-Masad, which explains that the religion of the disbelievers will be defeated. And this is why Allah says in the Qur'an, قُلْ جَاءَ الْحَقُّ وَزَهَقَ الْبَاطِلِ إِنَّ الْبَاطِلَ كَانَ زَحُوقًا. That say that the truth has arrived and falsehood has perished and withered away, for falsehood is bound to perish. And جَاءَ الْحَقُّ, that truth has arrived, this is Surah An-Nasr. And زَهَقَ الْبَاطِلِ إِنَّ الْبَاطِلَ كَانَ زَهُوقًا, and that falsehood will perish, this is Surah Al-Masad. So basically these are two surahs which explain the ultimate end of truth and falsehood. So this is what he says. So this surah, Surah Al-Nasr, is an explanation of what's now going to happen, i.e. victory and support and the changing of the tables. And so ultimately it's a surah of hope and promise. But Surah An-Nasr doesn't just end there. It's also an answer to another question. Okay, so once the victory comes, is that the end of the mission? Was that the end? Was that the objective? Victory over other people? And it says no, that there is something else that you should be doing. Once the victory comes, you should respond in a certain way. And the Prophet ﷺ should respond in a certain way. And because victory and fath and opening and conquests, which is what Surat An-Nasr is about, is an act of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when the rububiyyah of Allah, or the act of Allah comes, what you need to do is have ubudiyyah. So the ulama, they say there are two types of tawheed. There is the tawheed of rububiyyah, which is basically that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what He does for you. Allah's care for you, Allah created you, Allah's mercy for you. This is all under the gamut of rububiyyah. And then on the other hand, we have uluhiyyah, which is basically Allah's right to be worshipped. Allah's right to be singled out for worship. And when Allah's rububiyyah comes, there is also a response that we need to have. That's always the case, by the way. It's always the case that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does something for you, we need to have a response. Because ultimately, situations don't define who you are. Your lot in life, whether you're rich or poor, whether you're healthy or ill, whether you're, whatever your lot in life, whatever that might be, that does not define you. What defines you and what defines your worth is the response that you have to those situations, whatever they may be. And this is why you see Yusuf alayhi salam. Yusuf, he is thrown into a well by his brothers. He is then imprisoned falsely under a false charge, and he spends many years and he's enslaved, and then he's imprisoned, and he spends many years, 10, 20, 30 years. And the whole of Surah Yusuf is about that aspect of his life. And as soon as he becomes a king, as soon as he basically becomes Al-Aziz, the surah finishes. Because what's important is not the fact that he became a king. What's important isn't that he's now a king, he's powerful. The Qur'an isn't concerned with that. The Qur'an is concerned with his life as a slave. The Qur'an is concerned with his life as, in the well. With his life, trying to reform his brothers. Because of this thing that I've just said, that what matters isn't that you're successful in a material sense. What matters is what you do with the context that you live in. What do you do with the situation you find yourself in? So everybody, has their own situations. Everybody, brothers and sisters, young and old, we find ourselves in certain situations, whether in our family lives, whether at university, whether in terms of our financial affairs. What matters is who we are and what we decide to do. And we'll see this in Surat Al-Masad with Abu Lahab, who's one of the most noble people of his time. He's the uncle of the Prophet ﷺ, yet all of that did not help him at all, in the least. And this is why Allah says, Inna akramakum indallahi atqakum. That indeed the most noble of you in the sight of Allah are who? Are the most pious. Atqakum. Right? So the most noble of you aren't the ones, who have great status. The most noble of you are not the ones who get a first-class degree or a doctorate degree. That's not the most noble of you. The most noble of you are the ones who are the most pious. And just related to this, if you look at the prophets in the Qur'an, very many of them, actually the vast majority of them, did not have any power. Ibrahim alayhi salam, Isa alayhi salam, Nuh alayhi salam, all of these prophets had absolutely no power. They were in a state of, weakness when it comes to power, when it comes to dominion. But yet, they were so dear to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. they were dear to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is a few introductory remarks which I think we need to bear in mind when we come to study this surah. So Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. إذا جاء نصر الله والفتح ورأيت الناس يدخلون في دين الله أفواجا فسبح بحمد ربك واستغفر إنه كان توابا. So the first verse, when the victory of Allah comes, when the succor or the help of Allah comes, and the fath, and the fath. So, and the fath means basically the opening. And there are two opinions amongst the ulama, amongst the scholars, as to what this fath refers to. And the first group say that this fath refers to the conquest of the whole of Arabia, the Arabian Peninsula. And the second group say that it's a specific fath. It means the fath of Mecca, when the Prophet ﷺ entered Mecca. And Al-Razi, Maulana Farahi, and my teacher Sheikh Akram Al-Nadwi, they prefer that it means the second one, that it means the fath of Mecca. And the history of that is that the Prophet ﷺ was in Mecca for 13 years after becoming a prophet, and he attempted to call his people to Islam. And ultimately he and his companions were reviled. Some of them were tortured, some of them were even killed, like Yasir and Sumayya, and they were persecuted, and ultimately they were driven out of their homes. And the Prophet ﷺ, when he made that migration, at that point he turned to Mecca, and he looked at Mecca and he said, "O Mecca, if it was not for the fact that your people threw me out of you, I would never have left you." And the Prophet ﷺ, he takes shelter in a city to the north of Mecca called Yathrib, and later to be known to be the city of the Prophet, or Al-Madinah. And this is the city where the Muslims, they defend themselves, and from there their call continues and their numbers start to grow. And a number of battles ensue between the Prophet ﷺ and his people in Mecca. And ultimately, after 13 years of Mecca and 8 years of Medina, after the Quraysh breaks a treaty with the Prophet ﷺ, which was concluded 6 years after the Hijrah, the Prophet ﷺ marches in the 8th year of the Hijrah to Mecca with 10,000 men, and he re-enters the city of his birth without any resistance, or without much resistance. And this event is what's known as Al-Fath. It is the time when the Prophet ﷺ re-enters Mecca. And it was the conquest and event which sealed the Prophet's victory against the most powerful tribe in Arabia, the tribe of Quraysh, which was his tribe. And this is what this verse is referring to. This verse is referring to that very instance. And actually the books of Seerah mention something, really amazing actually, that the Prophet ﷺ, when he entered this city, his head was lowered and his beard was touching his saddle, and out of humility. And never ever before in the history of humanity has there been a conqueror who has conquered in this way, that he conquers and enters a city with his head lowered in humility. Before, any conqueror you see, they enter with might and with almost arrogance, if you like. But this is the Prophet ﷺ. And then the Prophet ﷺ, he stands at the door of the Kaaba and he says, "La ilaha illallah wahdah, sadaqa wa'dah, wa nasara abdah, wa hazama al-ahzaba wa'dah." And you say this when you do Safa and Marwa, you say this when you're at Safa. And this means that there is no God except Allah Himself. Sadaqa wa'da, He was truthful in His promise. Wa nasara abda, and He helped His slave, meaning He helped Muhammad. Wa hazama al-ahzaba wahda, and He is the one who alone defeated the armies, defeated the enemies. And Maulana Farahi says something really interesting here. He goes, actually this statement of the Prophet ﷺ is extracted from the Qur'an. He says, La ilaha illallah wahda is taken by the Prophet ﷺ from Surat Al-Kafirun. Because Surat Al-Kafirun is about the truth, that I worship only Allah. So La ilaha illallah wahda. And then Sadaqa wa'da wa nasara abda is from Surat An-Nasr. إِذَا جَاءَ نَصْرُ اللَّهِ وَالْفَتْحِ. This is a promise to the Prophet ﷺ. So صَدَقَ وَعْدَ وَنَصَرَ عَبْدَ. And then he says, وَهَزَمَ الْأَحْزَابَ وَحْدَ. And he is the one who defeated his enemies. And this is تَبَّتْ يَدَا أَبِي لَهَبٍ وَتَبٍ. So they say that actually the Prophet ﷺ, and actually one thing to learn, one thing that's quite important, and we'll finish with this point for Surat Al-Maghrib. One thing to bear in mind is that the Prophet ﷺ very often in his sunnah, he takes from the Qur'an. And again, Maulana Farahi, Hamiduddin Farahi has written a book about this, or he's written about this, and shows very often that many of the sunan, of the acts, of the examples, of the teachings of the Prophet ﷺ are actually derived from the Qur'an themselves. So the Prophet ﷺ, knowing the Qur'an, he then acts upon that Qur'an, which is why Aisha, when she was asked what was the example, what was the manners of the Prophet ﷺ, she said, "Kana khuluquhu al-Qur'an," that his khuluq was the Qur'an. So actually the sunnah, and this is why Imam Shafi'i, he says that the sunnah is the bayan of the Qur'an. It is the explanation of the Qur'an. Because it's true, because the Prophet ﷺ, and this is why it's important to always, and this is why I think these circles that you're holding are really, really very important. You know, the tafsir of the Qur'an should be the first thing that people learn. And then the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. But often what we see is that people, when they learn Islam, they learn fiqh, they learn aqidah, they learn history, they learn other things, and they don't learn the tafsir of the Qur'an, and they don't learn the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. Many, even in the madrasas, even in the education institutions, very little is there in terms of actually tafsir of the Qur'an and the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ through Bukhari and Muslim, directly through these sources. So it's very, very important that we, as people, as Muslims, come back to the sources of Islam directly. I was talking about the Prophet ﷺ and how he entered into Mecca. And when he entered in Mecca, don't forget that these are the people, as I said, who have driven him out, have persecuted him for 20 years. And when his forces enter, he asks them, "What should I do with you? What am I to do with you now?" And they said, "Khayran, akhun kareem wa ibnu akhin kareem," that we hope that you will do good to us, because you are akhun kareem, you are a generous brother, an honorable brother, wa ibnu akhin kareem, and the son of a generous brother. And he said, and the Prophet ﷺ at this point, he remembered and he recalls the statement of Yusuf alayhi salam, when his brothers came to him and they finally realized who Yusuf was. And after having done all of that to him, he says to them, "La tathriba alaykum al-yawm." There is no revenge upon you today. So this was the statement of Yusuf alayhi salam to his brothers. Really an amazing statement in the Qur'an. And then the Prophet ﷺ repeats the very same statement. And he says, "La tathriba alaykum al-yawm. La tathriba alaykum al-yawm. Idhabu fa antum tulaqa." Go, for you are free. You are free. Really, it's, if you think about it, it's easy to read these words. It's really easy for me to say this. But for me, to have been persecuted for 20 years of my life, and my family, killed, and my closest friends, all of this happening, and all this mocking and humiliation. And then after that, when I have full power to say, I'm not going to do anything. Just imagine how hard that is. And it really requires for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give any Muslim power, any true believer power. That's the kind of quality you need to have to be able to display when you come into power. And you find, often, even in the house of the Prophet ﷺ, in one story, he's in his house, in the house of Aisha, and another wife sends a plate as a gift to his guests, and he's with some guests. And Aisha, she has some ghaira. You know ghaira? Yeah, jealousy is the usual translation, but ghaira is kind of, there's no proper translation. It's kind of more of a possessiveness, if you like. So Aisha becomes slightly possessive of the Prophet ﷺ, and she smashes the plate, basically, and it falls on the ground, and this is in front of all the guests. Just imagine, in front of all the guests. Now imagine if that had happened in our houses, what would happen? There'd be some serious, war going on. If that happened, you've done my, you've dishonored me, you've done my bestie, or whatever, right? Whatever the word that might be used. But here's the Prophet ﷺ, he bends down, he picks up the plate, and he puts the piece together, and he says to Aisha, if you can replace the plate, please. Just very calmly, because, really, because the Prophet kana khuluquhu al-Qur'an. His khuluq was the Qur'an. These are not easy things to say. These are really very... when people talk about sunnahs of the Prophet ﷺ, we often talk about minor sunnahs. What you wear, raf'ul yadayn in the salah, whether you have to raf'ul yadayn, ameen bil jahar. All of these things, these are things which a lot of people have differed over. And these are so minor. The true sunnahs of the Prophet ﷺ, people have forgotten. When they say this is the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ to do this, the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ is not to backbite. The sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ is to feel love in your heart for other people. How hard is that? How easy is that today? How easy is that today? The sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ is when somebody harms you, you say, La tathriba alaykum al-yawm. That is really, this is the true example of the Qur'an and of the Prophet ﷺ. If we were able to rediscover these types of sunnahs, if we are able, then we are on our way to becoming a community who rediscover their Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, rediscover the Qur'an. If we don't, then we become, basically we follow the Jewish community. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that there will come a time, or la tattabi'unna sunana man qablakum, that you will follow the sunnahs of those before you. And then the companions asked, do you mean, and the Prophet said, until you enter, juhra dubbin, you will enter the hole or the den of the desert lizard, an animal in the desert. You will follow them into that hole. You will do what they do, you will copy them, you will imitate them, you will do exactly as they do, and you will go into that den. And they said, the companion said, do you mean the Jews and the Christians, Ya Rasulullah? And he said, yes, who else? Of course I mean the Jews and Christians. And to be absolutely honest, that prophecy has come true. We're talking about a surah of prophecies. That very prophecy has come true today. We are more concerned with legalities than the essence of the Qur'an, than the essence of the sunnah of the Prophet. We think by having a Muslim name, right, and by looking Muslim, and by attending Jumu'ah prayer, and by praying Eid prayers, and by all of these things, these and saying Bismillah before our food, and saying Alhamdulillah, and saying Bismillah amutu wa ahya before I go to sleep, and all these rituals, we think that these rituals make us Muslim. And this is exactly what the Jewish community do. If you know them, that's what they do. They have much more rituals than we do, on their Sabbath. And we think that by doing this robotically, that somehow we're going to achieve salvation. And that's not the case. So, salvation comes when you do these things. And there are so many types, and this is what the Quran, time and time again, the Quran talks about sabr and tawakkul and dhikrullah and mahabbatullah, and all of these things, and aiming for the next life. This is page after page. And once or twice the Quran mentions a few other things, that sometimes we overemphasize. So anyway, so this is how this man who was an orphan, who was thrown out of his city, he comes back and he secures victory. This complete change. And this is, Allah mentions His promise time and time in the Quran. I have a number of verses, but I'll leave them because of shortage of time. But what I want to just also just emphasize that if we, the Muslim Ummah today, it's suffering, wherever that may be. In so many parts in the world today, in parts that we hear of on the news and parts that we don't hear of. In places like Syria and Iraq and Yemen, and Palestine, and parts that we don't hear of, like Kashmir, like Burma. All of these places, there's huge suffering going on. And some of these places that we don't hear of, there's even more suffering, actually. If you read about what's happened in Jammu Kashmir, in the Indian-occupied Kashmir, it really breaks the heart. If you read William Baker and his book, Valley of Life, Valley of Death, Kashmir, it really, the kind of oppression that's taken place, and the humiliation against women that's taken place there is really mind-boggling. Really mind-boggling. You don't find that. So this is happening. And yet, why is it that our ummah is going through this stuff? Why is it that we stand up on the 27th night in Taraweeh every year, making long du'as, 1 hour du'as, right? 1 hour du'as, and yet, for 200 years we've been doing this, yet nothing has happened. This question needs to be asked. This question, I was in Masjid Al-Aqsa last Ramadan. Was it Ramadan before? Anyway, I forget. And, the Imam of the Aqsa Mosque, he was complaining that people don't pray in Aqsa. And I heard him myself over the minbar saying to people, please don't leave Aqsa. Please don't. So people around Aqsa, and it's not the barriers that's stopping them. It isn't. It's not that. It's people are not praying in Aqsa. So what is the liberation for Aqsa for then? If Allah provided you a mosque and you're not willing to pray in that mosque, why are you liberating it? You understand? So what I'm trying to say is that if we want the help of Allah to come, and this surah talks about the help of Allah, then we must act like the followers of messengers. We must be like that. We don't have a God-given right to be helped by Allah. As the Jewish community thought that they were the chosen people intrinsically, somehow through lineage, they are chosen. We are not chosen. None of us are chosen by lineage. None of us are chosen by birth. If anybody thinks that should not be there. The Qur'an the Qur'an is very clear about that. So we cannot be expected to be treated as believers without being believers. The people of Palestine cannot be expected to, and I've been to so many Arab countries and I've always asked, why don't you pray Fajr in the mosque? And they have, and why do you steal? Why do you overcharge on taxis? Why do you do this? Why do you do that? And they say, everybody else does it. We're too tired. So if we as a ummah are not praying, how can we, إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِقَوْمٍ حَتَّى يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِأَنفُسِهِمْ. Allah does not change the condition of people until they change what is in themselves. And when I was talking just before the break, I was talking about the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ and the Qur'an. This is why it's important to come back to those things. Because why? Because these things break our, number one, complacency, and number two, the Qur'an also breaks our culture. Very often, what happens is that we don't take guidance from the Qur'an and the Sunnah. We have an epistemological crisis in our community. We don't take our Qur'an and Sunnah as our real sources. It's only lip service. So for example, if you read the ulama and what they've said about after somebody gets married, that the wife has a right to have her own house. Every single alim said this in the past, right? It is the duty of the husband to provide that separate house away from the in-laws, because that otherwise it's not her house. They don't share that. Just as she doesn't share her plate of food, her clothes with anybody else, so her house is not shared, right? But who does this today? Who does it? Where do we get where are we taking? Because unfortunately what happens is that our culture is dominant. Our culture, our Indian, Pakistani, Arab, whatever, Malay, whatever culture it is, different cultures have different influences, they become more dominant over the culture of the Prophet ﷺ. And this is really, really important to understand, that if we want to be people who are helped by Allah, then we need to do our bit. We need to do and sacrifice sometimes our own upbringing for the culture of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Okay, so this is the first verse. وَرَأَيْتَ النَّاسَ يَدْخُلُونَ فِي دِينِ اللَّهِ أَفْوَاجًا. And when you see people entering into this religion in hordes, in hosts. So what happened is that whole regions, whole populations, whole swathes of people entered into Islam after Fathu Makkah. After the conquest of Makkah, many tribes began to come to the Prophet ﷺ, not just individuals, tribes, whole places, and they began to enter into Islam. And today we often hear, isn't it, you hear that Islam is the fastest growing religion in the world. You've seen so many documentaries. To be honest, I take that with a pinch of salt. I also think that Islam is a very rapidly declining religion. Firstly, because I'm not sure how many true Muslims we have, right? And secondly, if we have so many converts in our community, where are the converts? Look around you now. Are there any converts here? Maybe one or two, I don't know, right? But look around you. Where are they? If every mosque has so many converts, and you see every mosque, every time there's a convert, right? There's a takbir, a big takbir. There's a line. Well, congratulations, brother. Welcome, mashallah. And then nothing to do with that person ever again in your whole life. They're abandoned, right? Nobody wants to marry them. Nobody wants to have anything to do with them. And then what's happening? Do you know what's happening? What's happening is that they're not in the religion anymore. They have left the religion. If they were in the religion, you would see them in Fajr Salah. You would see them in Isha Salah. But where are they? Where are all these tens of thousands of people? And it's said that in Europe, that Britain is the place where most converts come to Islam. But I don't see them. So this is something that we really have to, we shouldn't just become happy and think, but we should also have, be speaking to one brother, you may know him, John Fontaine, the brother who works in Dawah, the convert in Manchester. He told me himself that he visited Sierra Leone, and he said half the population have converted to Christianity, from Islam to Christianity, half the population of Sierra Leone. So yes, we're rapidly growing, but look at the other side as well. And not only that, just again, one of the biggest problems that we now face as a community, and it's very painful, is apostasy amongst Muslim youth. And if you read people like Jeffrey Lang, who's a Muslim convert, who wrote the excellent book Even Angels Ask, and he also wrote Losing My Religion, he argues that apostasy is bigger than we think. He says that it's just hidden, that's all. And he says our children often don't believe in Allah, or many children don't believe in Allah or aren't sure that they believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They hear about evolution, they don't feel Islam is something they can practice, they study philosophy, etc., and they don't have answers that people can give them. They don't feel that people can give them answers. And this is no doubt happening. No doubt, and more in the media you see it's happening, but certainly is there people, are unsure about whether they really believe or not. So anyway, these are just things I wanted to put out there, because I think we need to smell the coffee. We need to be aware before we can even try to address any of these problems. We need to be aware of those problems. Anyway, so this is a time where people are entering into the ranks of Islam, and the influence of Islam grows rapidly, and it becomes the de facto power in Arabia. But this wasn't forced on people. There wasn't a forcing of this on people. People choose to enter the religion of their own will. And the leaders of the tribes, they flock to Medina to give their pledge of allegiance to Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now, one question is, why do so many people enter religion after the conquest? And why not before? And the answer is because believing after victory is easy. And because people follow power, people like to adopt the ways of any powerful country, and because most people are weak, so that's what they look for. But conversely, if you then believe when Islam is weak, if you then believe when times are difficult, then that requires something that's something else. That's heroic. If you are able to stick to your religion, if you are able to do the basics of your religion, just the basics, you don't have to be, allama, sheikh, you don't have to be this and that, right? Just the basics, the fara'id of your religion, the obligations of religion. If you're able to do that in times of weakness, then that is a huge thing. That is a huge achievement. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala really honors those people. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala really, and those people really are raised in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is why, and the point about people like to follow power, that's why even though our lands, many of our countries are not physically colonized, certainly, definitely they're mentally colonized. Everybody wants to come to Europe. Everybody thinks Europe is a land of honey, and money, and where money grows on trees. And that's just, it's a fact across history that people follow, the conqueror. But as I said, to believe before that requires iman, requires trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And only a few people do that. Only a few people do that. Islam was built on the likes of Abu Bakr and Umar ibn al-Khattab and the Meccan people and the Meccan converts. The people who converted early, the people who converted in the most difficult of times, these are the people who basically Islam relied on to spread, who Islam relied on in the most difficult of times. In the most difficult time, when the wars of apostasy took place after the death of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it was Abu Bakr who took that really difficult stance. Once Umar ibn al-Khattab was requested 4,000 men to support an army, and he sent 4 men, and he said each one of these is worth 1,000 people, and he was right, because quality is much more important than quantity. Quality is much more important than quantity. So basically, to get Surat An-Nasr, to get إِذَا جَاءَ نَصْرُ اللَّهِ وَالْفَتْحِ, to have the Fath, you need 20 years. You need 20 years, 13 years of Makkah, and you need 8 years of Medina. Right? It didn't just come in a vacuum. You need to read the Qur'an, the Meccan Qur'an. You need to read about all these, the Meccan Seerah. You need to read the Medinan Seerah. You need to live by that. And then إِذَا جَاءَ نَصْرُ اللَّهِ وَالْفَتْحِ, then Allah's promise comes. So you have to read Surah Al-Muzammil, قُمِ اللَّيْلَ يَا أَيُّهَا الْمُزَّمِّلِ, oh you who are wrapped up in your garments. Qum, stand, قُمِ اللَّيْلَ إِلَّا قَلِيلًا, stand at night except for a bit. نِصْفَهُ أَوْ انْقُصْ مِنْهُ قَلِيلًا, half of it or a bit less than that. So you need this before you become strong, and then you can get the victory of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And another thing related to this, this is actually why this kind of distinction between people who believe before victory and people who believe after victory. This is why the companions that accepted the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam after the hijrah have never been equal to the companions that accepted the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam before the hijrah. And those who believed in the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam after the Fath, after the conquest of Mecca, were absolutely not equal to those people who believed before Fath and before Hudaybiyah. This is absolutely the case. And there are companions who died before the conquest of Mecca and who never experienced any conquest, any power, any kingdom, any dominion, right? Like Hamza and Yasir and Sumayya and all these people who only experienced Islam in a relative state of weakness. Yet those people are far higher in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala than those people who came to Islam, and Islam basically ruled the whole world. Right? So ruling the whole world isn't a measure of success really. What is a measure of success is, as I said at the beginning, it's what you do with the opportunities that you are afforded with. Yusuf alayhi salam's success wasn't that he was Aziz. Yusuf alayhi salam's success was that he was patient basically. And he had taqwa in the house of that woman who for 10 years tried to seduce him with everything she could. And it wasn't just he was walking past her one day and he had to lower his gaze. It wasn't that. It was he was in her house and she tried everything you can absolutely imagine to try and seduce him. And not only that, he was a slave. And if he did not listen to her, there would be serious consequences. He wasn't free. Right? So you see the power imbalance. But yet Yusuf basically does what he does. That's true success. That's true. And today we've shifted the mawazin, we've shifted the balance and shifted scales, and we think we think that what we need to do is achieve power in Muslim lands. And now we see the mess that Muslim lands are in after this Arab Spring, as they call it. Libya, complete, utter, very, very difficult situation. Syria, Yemen, all these places, even Egypt, it's even a worse situation than it used to be. Because we did not do things the right way. We did not do things. We should have, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who gives these things. So anyway, I want to give a story here. Once after the conquest of Mecca, after that, some of the leaders of Quraysh, Al-Harith ibn Hisham and Suhail ibn Amr, some of the top leaders of Quraysh, came and sat with Umar ibn al-Khattab. This is in Medina now, and sat next to him. And then the foremost muhajirun, the early converts to Islam, they started to come. And Umar ibn al-Khattab, he started to say to Al-Harith and Suhail, make space, Suhail. Make space, Harith, moving them away slowly. And then the Ansar started to come in and to visit Umar ibn al-Khattab. And he said again to Suhail and Harith, make space. And he sat these people next to him until basically they ended up as far as possible from Umar. So basically Umar is giving precedence to these people. Umar, because he's doing it deliberately. He knows that there's a pecking order, and the pecking order is those who believe first get first place amongst around the Khalifa. So there's no nepotism here. It's not that you're richer than him. He's got more contacts. He's my family member, so that he gets to sit next to me. He's the pecking order is based on taqwa and iman. And then Al-Harith, these were people of honor. The Quraysh, basically, they were the most honored tribe, and these were the leaders of Quraysh. So for them, dishonor is a big thing, is a massive thing. So then Harith says to Suhail, don't you see what he just did to us? Don't you see what's just happened? And Suhail said, he was very, very intelligent. He goes, don't blame him. Don't blame him. We should blame ourselves. Those people were called and they rushed to respond. We too were called, but we were slow. And later they went to Umar ibn al-Khattab and said, O Amir al-Mu'mineen, we saw what you did to us yesterday. We noticed what happened. And we know it's our own fault. Is there any way that we can make up what we've lost? Is there any way that we can make up for all this thing that we've lost? Now they realize this huge loss that they've incurred. Right? They fought the Prophet ﷺ for many, many years. And the people who supported the Prophet ﷺ, they took all the ajr and all the thawab. And Umar ibn al-Khattab said, I don't know anything except that direction. And he pointed north. He pointed to the frontiers of Rome, meaning go and defend the Muslim lands. Go and fight. That's what he's saying. Because they were in war at that time. Because I don't know anything else except that. And in fact, if you read the biographies of these people, they really sacrificed everything. They took their families and they died in those frontiers, these people, because they were so keen to regain that, what they'd lost, regain that opportunity. So basically, don't be weak, be strong. Be strong in times of weakness. It isn't easy today to be a strong believer. It is not easy. But if you are, then you will have gained something very, very precious. Very, very precious. You can't count it. You can't measure it. It will only be shown to you on the day of judgment, when you stand in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Don't let other people take that reward. It's your reward. It's too precious. It's your wealth. Don't let other people, don't let that train go. Don't miss that train. So, وَرَأَيْتَ النَّاسَ يَدْخُلُونَ فِي دِينِ اللَّهِ أَفْوَاجًا. And you see people entering into the religion in droves. فَسَبِّحْ, this is the last verse, فَسَبِّحْ بِحَمْدِ رَبِّكَ وَاسْتَغْفِرْ إِنَّهُ كَانَ تَوَّابًا. And so, glorify your Lord with His praises and seek His forgiveness. Indeed, He is an acceptor, or He accepts people's forgiveness. إِنَّهُ كَانَ تَوَّابًا. So the word here, the first word here is فَسَبِّحْ, glorify. And one thing to note is that sometimes the Qur'an, and this is the literary uniqueness of the Qur'an, uses certain words in a way which basically refers to something else. So let me give you an example. When Allah said to the Qur'an, to the Prophet ﷺ in the Qur'an, "Iqra bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq." Most people translate that to mean read, right? That's how you've heard it, right? But in reality, what it is a reference to is the prayer. It means read the Qur'an in the prayer. And this is why at the end, the last verse of Surah, that surah is what? Is Fasjud waqtarib. Wasjud waqtarib. Yeah? Wasjud waqtarib. Do sajda, because it starts with the recitation, that surah, and it ends with sajda. Right? And this is again, for example, وَقُرْآنَ وَأَقِمِ الصَّلَاةَ لِدُلُوكِ الشَّمْسِ وَغَسَقِ اللَّيْلِ إِلَى غَسَقِ اللَّيْلِ وَقُرْآنَ الْفَجْرِ إِنَّ قُرْآنَ الْفَجْرِ كَانَ مَشْهُودًا. Right? This people think that when you recite Qur'an at Fajr time, that the angels come. It doesn't mean that. It means the Salah of Fajr. أَقِمِ الصَّلَاةَ لِدُلُوكِ الشَّمْسِ. Establish the prayer. وَقُرْآنَ الْفَجْرِ, and recite the Qur'an in Fajr for a lengthy period. Recite it long. And this is why Qur'an is used for the Fajr prayer. Right? So the other prayers I mentioned. So and also many also in the Qur'an, the word ruku' is used for prayer. The word sujood is used for prayer. And in the same way, tasbih has been used in the Qur'an for prayer. Fasabbih means pray to your Lord. It means pray to your Lord. Fasabbih, because tasbih is what? Is dhikrullah. And dhikrullah is the essence of prayer. You know, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala spoke to Musa on Mount Sinai, you know, he basically he whispered to Musa, and he gave him a secret that he then divulged to us all. And he said, "Innani an Allah fa'budani wa aqim as-salata li dhikri." Establish the prayer for my remembrance. So the prayer is for the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So sabbaha means here to pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Fasabbih, O Prophet, pray to your Lord. Pray to your Lord. This should be your response. When you are conqueror, when you enter that city, when you achieve victory, when you see all these people entering into the religion in droves, when you achieve that success, pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and thank Him. And because prayer is thanks to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it is the ultimate way of expressing your thanks. This is why when the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was asked, "O Prophet of Allah, why is it that you stand so long in prayer at night until your feet crack, and Allah has forgiven your sins, the future and the past? Why is it?" And he said, what did he say? He said, "Afala akunu abdan shakura." Shall I not be a thankful slave? So salah is the greatest way to thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So what I advise myself firstly, and everybody in this room, is, pray your 5 prayers with khushu', with dhikrullah. Remember that prayer is to make you, connect you with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That prayer is to remind you of who your Lord is and how much He loves you. That's what the prayer is actually about. And the next word is Rabbika. People, again, they mistranslate Rabb. Rabb, people say is Lord. But in reality, there is no word in the English language that can fairly represent what Rabb means. Because in Semitic languages, and Arabic is a Semitic language, often words relate to other words that sound the same. And Rabb is very similar to Ab. And Ab means father, as you know. And Rabb means, so Rabb is somebody who's much more than your father. Much more caring, much more loving, somebody who takes care of you, somebody who sustains you, somebody who plans for you, somebody who is protecting you every single moment, averting harm from you, leading you in the right path, trying to guide you. All of these things, Rabb is. So Rabb basically, I had a discussion with a Christian minister, and he said, and we were talking about God. He's a Baptist minister, and he said, that we in Christianity, God is a loving God. And I said it's the same thing in Islam, that we talk about the mercy of Allah. And he said, no, actually, hang on a second. He goes, when you talk about that, when I think about mercy, the mercy, I think the mercy of the God of Islam, what comes to my mind is the mercy of the caliph, the mercy of the king, so you're at the mercy of a powerful tyrant, basically. And I said, no, actually, that's not true. Because in Arabic, the word rahmah is very much related to the word rahim, the word which means the womb of the mother, rahim, right? And the word rahim comes from rahmah. And I said that actually the mercy that we're talking about is the mercy of the mother, not the mercy of the tyrant. The mercy much more than that. Anyway, so فَسَبِّحْ بِحَمْدِ رَبِّكَ, your Lord who loves you. Pray to Him, thank Him, thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He is the one who's, basically Allah is telling him, He is the one who's given you this victory. It's not you who's done this victory. And this is why the Prophet, he understood these verses very, very well. This is why he went into Mecca on the back of his horse or camel, and his head was like this, and his lihya, his beard was touching the saddle. Why? Because of this verse. فَسَبِّحْ بِحَمْدِ رَبِّكَ وَاسْتَغْفِرْ, and ask for His forgiveness. Ask for His forgiveness. And this is the second response that you should have. Seek forgiveness from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He will accept your repentance. He will accept, number one, your repentance, and number two, He will accept your deeds. He will accept your deeds. So whenever you do anything good in life, whether you pray, whether you achieve success in your exams, whether you get married, any success that you achieve, do tasbih of Allah, thank Allah, say subhanallah, and do istighfar. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make that good deed of yours, or that success of yours, perfect. He will accept it. And also istighfar is here to remind us not to be arrogant, to remind us to remind us that Allah, actually everything. Many people you find, and this happens to us, so many people, that they forget when they succeed at something, they forget where that success came from. It's easy to become overwhelmed by feelings of emotions of pride and arrogance, and to be deceived by strength. And it's easy to forget that actually all of that came from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So really, really important to remember that. Really important to remember whatever success you achieve, that actually is from God. Every second that your heart beats, that actually is Allah telling your heart to beat. The fact that you're hearing me now, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is allowing all of us to exist. So it's and the other thing is that it's very important to form the habit of istighfar. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to say astaghfirullah, do istighfar, do tawbah to Allah more than 70 times a day. Just imagine him, the Prophet ﷺ, doing that 70 times. Why? Because he knows that everything that he does is not perfect as well. Right? It's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that makes it perfect. Only Allah is perfect. So and this is why the scholars say, even our istighfar needs istighfar. Even the way we do astaghfirullah, 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 tawbah, tawbah, even that needs istighfar. Even that is wrong, right? Even that, there's a way to do istighfar to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah is tawwab, innahu kana tawwaba. Allah loves to forgive. Now to finish this surah, the interesting thing is that we've now covered the meanings of this surah, but the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam's understanding of the Qur'an was very deep. And when he received this surah, he also took from it another meaning. And he knew basically from this surah that his time had come, that now his death was approaching. And then he understood that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling him to prepare for death. This is why again pray. And this is why Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, his name for this surah was Surat Al-Tawdi'. It was the surah of bidding farewell to the Prophet ﷺ. And the role of the prophets is very much like mothers. Very much like mothers. They give and they give and they give. And when it's their chance to take, they go. They leave us. And Muhammad Iqbal, that great poet of Pakistan and India, says in a poem about his mother once she died. He wrote some very beautiful poetry, and he says, "Oh my mother, you gave to me, you sacrificed, and when I grew up and was in a position to give to you, you left me. You left me." You know, he's writing about his, that's what parents are like. They give and they give and they give. When they get old, it's their time to go. And this was what the Prophet ﷺ, the Prophet knew that the end of his mission was nigh, that it was near, and that when a Prophet's mission is done, that now there is no need to stay in this world any longer. And so you can see that the Prophet's mission has gone full circle. Salah and istighfar in Surat An-Nasr, in the last verse of Surat An-Nasr, is the very same thing that was mentioned the Prophet ﷺ right at the beginning of his mission. Where? In Surat Al-Muzammil. Again, Surat Al-Muzammil. Allah said, He said at the end of Surat Al-Muzammil, وَاسْتَغْفِرُوا اللَّهِ إِنَّ اللَّهَ غَفُورٌ رَحِيمٌ. So Surah Al-Muzammil starts with prayer, قُمِ اللَّيْلَ إِلَّا قَلِيلًا, and ends with istighfar. So again, Surah Al-Nasr ends with salah and ends with istighfar. And so in this manner, his mission started with salah and istighfar, his mission ended with salah and istighfar, and that is a clear proof to us that the purpose of this mission is to teach people ibadah, is to teach people salah and to teach people istighfar of their Lord. It is not to gain power. It is not to gain khilafah. It is not to gain hukam in a Muslim land. The purpose of this religion is to spread, and that's why Allah says, وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. I did not create people. I did not create the jinn except that they worship me. This is the purpose of this religion. This is the crux of why we've been created, why I'm on this earth. And this is the question that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will ask every single man and every single woman from the beginning of time till the end of time. On that day, there'll be no barrier between Allah and His slaves. There'll be no translator to translate for us. Allah will ask, I created you for a purpose. Tell me, did you fulfill the purpose of your creation or not? The purpose was worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is the purpose of our creation. That is the purpose of our creation. Another verse, إِنَّهُمْ كَانُوا قَبْلَ ذَلِكَ مُحْسِنِينَ كَانُوا قَلِيلًا مِنَ اللَّيْلِ مَا يَهْجَعُونَ وَبِالْأَسْحَارِ هُمْ يَسْتَغْفِرُونَ. Allah talking about the people of paradise, they were, in the dunya, they were people of goodness. Muhsinin. كَانُوا قَلِيلًا مِنَ اللَّيْلِ مَا يَهْجَعُونَ. They used to sleep only a little bit, meaning they were praying at night. وَبِالْأَسْحَارِ هُمْ يَسْتَغْفِرُونَ. They would do istighfar at suhoor time, at sari time. So again, praying at istighfar. Anyway, so that's Surah Al-Nasr. Surah Al-Masad, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. I'll be a bit quicker because I spent quite a while on that. تَبَّتْ يَدَا أَبِي لَهَبٍ وَتَبٍّ مَا أَغْنَى عَنْهُ مَالُهُ وَمَا كَسَبَ سَيَصْلَى نَارًا ذَاتَ لَهَبٍ وَامْرَأَتُهُ حَمَّالَةَ الْحَطَبِ فِي جِيدِهَا حَبَلٌ مِّن مَّسَدٍ. So this is surah number 111, and Surah Al-Masad consists of 5 verses. And in this surah, Surat Al-Masad, Abu Lahab, who was the uncle of the Prophet ﷺ, he was the son of Abdul Muttalib, just as Abdullah, the father of the Prophet ﷺ, was the son of Abdul Muttalib. He has been given as an example. And his wife, Jamil, has been given as an example, and they've both been basically consigned to the punishment of the fire of hell. So this is what this surah is about. And so in the first verse, Allah says, Tabbat yada abi lahab wa tab. Doomed are the hands of Abu Lahab, and he himself is doomed. Doomed is he. So there's an explanation which is very famous and is basically you know, the explanation that the vast majority of people give, which is that this verse or this surah was revealed in response to a particular event that took place at the time of the Prophet ﷺ. And they say that there's a hadith in Bukhari on the authority of Abdullah ibn Abbas, who said that when the verse of وَأَنذِرْ عَشِيرَتَكَ الْأَقْرَبِينَ came down, which basically means that, O Prophet, warn your closest family members. What happened is the Prophet ﷺ receives this command and he goes to Mount Safa and he climbs Mount Safa and he calls out to Quraysh until they gather around him. And he said, O Quraysh, O my people, if I was to tell you that behind me there is an army that is about to attack you now, would you believe me or not? And they said, yes, we've not heard you lie, we trust you. And he said, in that case, I am warning you of an impending doom, an impending punishment, i.e. the fire of hell. And upon that, his uncle Abu Lahab, he says, تَبًّا لَكْ سَائِرَ الْيَوْمِ أَلِهَذَا جَمَعْتَنَا وَدَعَوْتَنَا, that may you perish, may you wither away. You know, he basically cursed him, he abused him. Is it for this reason that you've gathered us and that you've called us? So most people say that this is what this surah came as a response to that, because he said tabban lak. Allah says tabbat yada abi lahabin wa tab, you know, as a response to Abu Lahab. The problem with this explanation, and this is Maulana Farahi writes this, and it's an excellent basically take on the whole surah. He says the problem is, firstly, that this is not the way of Allah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not condemn people to the fire of hell without giving them many chances and repeating the call. That's not the way of Allah. Why else would Nuh alayhi salam spend 950 years calling people before Allah then destroys them? Why does Musa come to Fir'aun and keeps on calling him, keeps on repeating the message? 9 signs were given, 9 plagues, and the incident of the magicians and the hand under the bosom that became white. Why are all of these things continuously being shown to Musa? Because Allah, out of His rahmah, wants to keep giving people chances. And same with Banu Israel. They were repeatedly given chances throughout the ages. Prophet after prophet after prophet after prophet, sometimes 2 or 3 prophets in one go, to call them back. And their last opportunity was Isa alayhi salam. And that's why he was so harsh against them. He was extremely harsh against the rabbi, the rabbinical class, the scholarly class, basically the ulama. He was extremely harsh against them. Because now, if they didn't accept him, what was going to happen is that Allah was going to remove His istifa, His favor on them, and He was going to change it to the lineage of Ismail, away from the lineage of Ishaq. And that's what the Qibla, the change of Qibla signifies. The change of the Qibla in Surah Al-Baqarah signifies a move away from Jerusalem, i.e. the Ishaqi line, the Isaac line, to the Ishmaeli line, to the line of Ismail alayhi salam. And so the way of Allah, the sunnah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is not to in one go, on the first opportunity, condemn somebody to hellfire. So this is one one problem that this incident, this story poses. How can Abu Lahab say one thing and Fir'aun said worse things? He said, Ana rabbukumul a'la, I am your Lord, the highest Lord. I am your Lord. So how come he gets chances and Abu Lahab said tabban lak? Maybe he had a bad day, tabban lak, and then this comes down. Secondly, also the way of the Qur'an is not to be harsh, is not to be harsh immediately. Musa alayhi salam, what was he told when he was told to go to Fir'aun? What was he told? Anybody? How was he told to address Fir'aun? Yeah. وَقُولَا لَهُ قَوْلًا لَيِّنًا, speak to him softly. You know, the worst tyrant in history, قُولَ لَهُ قَوْلًا لَيِّنًا, speak to him nicely, speak to him softly. So the way of, and then for a verse to come down, tabbat yada, is very harsh. You know, he is doomed. You know, it's. So you see, you know, so this is another problem. You know, that it poses. Also, number 3, the Qur'an asks the Prophet time and time again not to respond in a tit for tat to the ignorant. You know, if somebody says something to you, what's the best response? The best response is to be dignified. You know, I just what's just come to my mind now is I saw just a clip of a sister who was giving an interview, and somebody was sitting nearby, and he said something about Muslims, and she basically, you might have seen this, I don't know, I can't, you know, it was about a year or two ago, but she basically became really angry, and she lost it, right? And she goes, go on, what did you say? What did you say? You know, go on, say it to my face now, something like that, you know. And I thought that looked really, really bad. And on the other hand, you know, this sister who won Great British Bake Off, what's her name again? Nadia Hussain, yeah? When she went on to Radio 4, and she said, look, now I face abuse, racist abuse on a daily basis. And they said, how do you respond to it? And she goes, well, I don't bring myself to that level. You know, and that impact that kind of response has is far, far better than if you were to stand up and say, what did you say? You know, say it to my face, let's, you know, and respond. The Prophet ﷺ was time and time again told, وَأَعْرِضْ عَنِ الْجَاهِلِينَ, you know, فَتَوَلَّ عَنْهُمْ, you know, turn away from them. When they say something, don't respond to them, right? And if that is Allah's command, how can Allah then, you know, when Abu Lahab says something, then does it make sense that he asks his Prophet to turn away, and then yet Allah now is engaging in okay, you say tabban lak, and now I will say tabban lak? That doesn't fit with the Qur'an. So this incident, this explanation is basically problem, and it's instructive that Abdullah ibn Abbas didn't say, I heard this from the Prophet ﷺ. It's Abdullah ibn Abbas's own, perhaps, opinion and his own istinbat, right? It's not from the Prophet ﷺ. It's not musnad. It's not connected to the Prophet ﷺ. So basically, this surah therefore could not have been revealed so early. It has to have been revealed much later, but before Badr. We know it should have been revealed before Badr. Does anybody know why? Why before Badr? I'm asking you guys now to wake you up a bit. Why before Badr? Yeah. Well done. Yeah. Who was killed? Who was killed? Abu Lahab. Yeah. Abu Lahab died around the time of Badr. So we know that it's between those two times. Not so close, and probably not so close to Badr either. Right? And also, another thing is that Tabbat Yada Abi Lahab is therefore a promise to the Prophet ﷺ and a prophecy that Abu Lahab, the power of Abu Lahab is going to wane, is going to perish. This is exactly what's happening. And so, okay, so the verse itself, Tabbat Yada Abi Lahab, the hands of Abu Lahab have perished. And in Arabic, when you say somebody's hands, yadahu, you know, you can mean their power. So basically what it means that his hands have been broken. In English, we say somebody's back has been broken. In Arabic, you say that his hands has been broken, to mean his power has been shattered. So this is what it will mean. This is what it means. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, the power of Abu Lahab has been shattered, i.e. it's going to be shattered. And also, watab, and he himself will perish. He himself will perish. So this is basically what it means. Another interesting thing is that there are only 2 people in the Qur'an who were contemporaries of the Prophet ﷺ who've been mentioned by name in the Qur'an. One is Abu Lahab. Does anybody know who the second one is? Zayd, excellent, mashallah, well done. Zayd is the other one. And Zayd is a foreigner. He's from Banu Kalb. Zayd ibn Haritha. He was gifted to the Prophet ﷺ by Khadija when she got married to him. upon their marriage. And he's a slave, right? And Zayd ibn Haritha, even though he's a foreigner, even though he's a slave, he came to be known as Hibbu Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the most beloved of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So here's a man who's basically an alien to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, an alien to Quraysh. He's a foreigner. Yet his loyalty lies, he's not from the Prophet, his loyalty lies with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The other man who's been named in the Qur'an by name, at the time, and who's a contemporary of the Prophet, is Abu Lahab, somebody who's from the family of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He's the uncle of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He's the brother of Abdullah. And he is the greatest enemy of the Prophet ﷺ, or one of the greatest enemies. So you see this contrast that is made between the two people. So in fact, Zayd is the antithesis, if you like, of in the Quran of Abu Lahab. And Abu Lahab is the antithesis of Zayd. And this, a lesson from that is that the Prophet ﷺ said, and I'm going to be closing shortly, don't worry, inshallah. Man batta'a bihi amaluhu lam yusri' bihi nasabuh. That whoever's actions are slow, whoever's slow to act, their lineage will not make them speed up. Lam yusri' bihi nasabuh. Basically, your lineage will not help you if you don't act. So here's Abu Lahab, who's basically a son of Ibrahim alayhi salam. He's a descendant of Ibrahim, and yet he's been consigned to punishment. But yet Zayd, who was not a descendant of Ibrahim, hasn't. Ma aghna anhu maluhu wa ma kasab. His wealth and what he has earned will not avail him, will not benefit him. So though Abu Lahab was a very wealthy man, as opposed to Abu Talib, the other. The Prophet ﷺ had 16 aunties and uncles. 6 aunties, 10 uncles. Only 4 of the uncles witnessed him becoming a prophet. Only 4 of them were alive at that time. 2 of them believed and 2 of them disbelieved. The believers were, of the uncles the believers were were Hamza and Abbas. And the 2 disbelievers were Abu Talib and Abu Lahab. Abu Talib was a disbeliever, but he supported the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You know that, right? And Abu Lahab disbelieved, but he worked against the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the Prophet had 6 other aunties, and Safiya being one of them who believed. So, ma aghna anhu maluhu wa ma kasab. So Abu Lahab was a very wealthy. Abu Talib wasn't so wealthy. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying here that his wealth and what he has earned, maybe his sons, or everything he's invested, his time, his life, everything he's invested his time and money into, all of that will not benefit Abu Lahab, and it has not benefited him. And this is echoed in the Qur'an by many verses. For example, the verse in Surat Al-Haqqa, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَأَمَّا مَنْ أُوتِيَ كِتَابَهُ بِشِمَالِهِ. As for the one who's given his or her records in his or her left hands, they will say, يَا لَيْتَهَا كَانَتِ الْقَاضِيَةِ. I wish that my death was the end of me. مَا أَغْنَى عَنِّي مَالِيَةً هَلَكَ عَنِّي سُلْطَانِيَةً. My wealth has not helped me. مَا أَغْنَى عَنِّي مَالِيَةً هَلَكَ عَنِّي سُلْطَانِيَةً. My power has diminished and has perished. 3 things go with you to your grave. 3 things will go with you to your grave. Number 1, your family, they will bury you. Number 2, maybe some of your wealth. Maybe you'll be driven there. Maybe some of your wealth will go with you, and your actions. And 2 will have to return. And only 1 thing can remain. And the 1 thing that remains is your actions. The 1 thing that remains is actions. And, in an interesting statement, the Prophet ﷺ once asked Aisha, he asked her about a sheep that was that they had, that was some meat that they were distributing, and he said, how much of it has remained? And she said, لم يبق منه إلا كتفه. that only the shoulder remains. And he said, and the Prophet ﷺ said, no, Aisha, all of it remains except the shoulder. All of it has remained except the shoulder, meaning that the thing that you gave in charity, that's actually the thing that's going to remain. So you see things, what is tangible in this life, all of these things, they're tangible now. In the next life, they will be intangible. They will not exist. These are, in terms of the next life, a mirage. What is intangible now, your sabr, la tathriba alaykum al-yawm, your forgiveness, your prayer, your khushu' in your prayer, your love of Allah, they will become tangible in the next life. And literally as well. And I don't have time to go into that. So, anyway, ma aghna anni maliya halaka anni sultaniya. I've got to finish. Let's carry on. The prophecy is fulfilled anyway, and it was fulfilled in Badr. A few days after Badr, Abu Lahab, he becomes infected by a contagious disease in his stomach. His body becomes starts to rot. Nobody wants to go near him. Even his own sons don't want to go near him. For 3 days, his body's left in the house, and it starts to putrefy. And then they bury him with long sticks, pushing him into a hole and throwing water from afar, and that's how he was buried. Even his own sons basically weren't of any use to him on that day. Sayasla naran dhat lahab. Abu Lahab will endure a fire fiercely glowing. Sayasla naran dhat lahab. This is what he will endure. So after his destruction in this life is mentioned, in this verse his destruction in the next life is mentioned. And that's why the grammar is different. In tabbat yada abi lahabin wa tab, the grammar is in what is known as the madi, the fi'l madi. It's a fi'l madi, it's the past tense that's used. But the past tense can be used for something future as well. For example, qad qamat as-salah, when you're about to pray, you say qad qamat as-salah. That prayer has been established for tahqiq, basically to mean it's definitely going to happen. So tabbat yada means that definitely he's going to perish. But now for the next life, Allah says, uses the future tense. Sayasla, he will burn in the fire, in the fire which possesses flames. Anyway, we don't have time. وَامْرَأَتُهُ, and Maulana Farahi deals with the question of why does the Qur'an use the word lahab here to describe the fire? Because lahab means flame. It means redness and flame. Abu Lahab was called Abu Lahab, it's said, because he had red cheeks, he had a redness in his complexion. And also some people say because he was handsome and he was beautiful. So they used to call him Abu Lahab. But now the Qur'an is playing on that name and using his name in his punishment. And very often in the Qur'an what you get is this principle called al-jaza'u min jinsil amal, that the punishment fits the crime. That when you do a crime in this life, that punishment will be commensurate to that crime. It will fit that crime. For example, let me give you a quick example about the ayat of zakat. Allah says, وَالَّذِينَ يَكْنِزُونَ الذَّهَبَ وَالْفِضَّةَ, those who don't pay the zakah basically and who hoard gold and silver, وَلَا يُنْفِقُونَهَا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ فَبَشِّرْهُمْ بِعَذَابٍ أَلِيمٍ, and they don't spend it, give them glad tidings of a painful punishment. يَوْمَ يُحْمَى عَلَيْهَا, on the day when that very gold and silver that they hoarded will be heated up. في نار جهنم فتكوى بها جباههم وجنوبهم وظهورهم, and they will be branded on their foreheads, their sides, and their backs with that very wealth that they hoarded. So actions in this life take on bodies in the next life. Actions in this life become material in the next life. If they're good actions, they will be good, and if they're bad actions, they'll be bad. وَامْرَأَتُهُ حَمَّالَةَ الْحَطَبِ, and also his wife, Jamil was her name, حَمَّالَةَ الْحَطَبِ, she will also burn in the fire. And she was a carrier of hatab. She was a carrier of firewood, basically, is the literal translation. Now some people say this means that what she used to do was that she used to spread gossip. Because some people say in Arabic, you can say that she is a hammalatul hatab. She is somebody who's carrying firewood, meaning that she goes around doing namima, right? Tells that person, do you know what that person said about you? and she stokes the flames of hatred and enmity and discord and disunity between people. Some people say that. Another explanation for this is that no, what she used to do was she used to throw thorns and sharp objects on the path of the Prophet ﷺ. So on the Day of Judgment, this is why she will be given the very same punishment again. Her evil deed will be made to punish her in the next life, basically. And another explanation is that that's basically, they're the main two explanations. فَفِي جِيدِهَا حَبَلٌ مِّن مَسَدٍ. Around her neck is a rope of twisted strands. A rope of twisted strands. Jeed basically means a neck, the place of the neck where women wear their jewelry. That's jeed. That's what you call the jeed. And masad is anything which is tightly twisted. A rope which is tightly twisted, usually from palm leaves. So fi jidiha habalum min masad. In her neck will be, in the fire of hell, a rope made from masad. And it's said because she used to love to show off her jewelry out of pride and arrogance and boastfulness, and she would walk around for that purpose. She would be boast, look at my jewelry, look how rich I am, look at my status, type of thing. And so she will bear the consequences of that. Fi jidiha habalum mim masad. So this is the punishment of the wife of Abu Lahab in the next life. So I'll finish it there because I've already gone over my time by quite a lot. If there's anything, if any question, please do. Otherwise, inshallah, we'll end it there. Anything, inshallah? Yes? I can't hear because that's on, so it's not reaching me. More positive note. Okay, so basically, what I said earlier about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He will, help you. His succor will come, His victory will come, as long as you do the basics, as long as you do your responsibility. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's love is there. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala looked after the Prophet sallam. He says in Surat Al-Duha, did He not find you an orphan? Did He not find you poor? Did He not find you lost? But He helped you, He guided you, He made you rich, He looked after you. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He's Rahman, He's Rahim, He will look after us. But also we shouldn't be scared, to be honest, of talking about the verses of hellfire. We shouldn't be, because the very first thing that Allah told the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam to do was anzir. Qum fa anzir. He didn't say qum fa bashir, qum fa anzir, He said, stand and warn people. And the Prophet ﷺ, what did he say? He said, I warn you of the fire of hell. Right? And, people think that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks like this. People get scared of that. That the reason isn't to scare you and for no reason. I'll give you an example. If la samahallah, there was a fire in your homes, may Allah protect you all, and your family was sleeping, and you were trying to wake them up and you couldn't, what would you do? You would scream and shout, would you? Even if you had to hit them, right? Wouldn't you do that? You would do that, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, sometimes what He does to wake us up, right, is to speak to us about the realities and about details, right? So that we wake up, basically. So it's not out of anything like that. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying these things out of mercy to us, out of mercy. And we should really think about these things. We should think about death. We should think about the hellfire. And it's part of our religion. And we shouldn't go away, shouldn't try to, block our minds from these things. Okay, inshallah.